Good evening. I'd like to call the Board of Education meeting for Wednesday, January 24th to order. Time is 7:01 p.m. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Deb, would you please call the roll? Here. Here. Here.
Sam Sharma,
Here.
Jessica Weaver,
Here.
Anastasia Yap. And I missed Timothy Newton.
He's not going to be here tonight.
I'm present as well, Sean Holleran. I didn't get the audio if you called.
Thank you. We got you. Can you hear us now?
Yes. Don't turn this into a Verizon commercial.
Okay, thank you. All right. I'd like to open it up to public participation on any matter related to board responsibilities. If you are in person or in the room, in person or online, you can come to the head of the table or raise your hand to be recognized. There is a phone number to call in if you wish.
The Everyday Heroes first.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I skipped something. All right. We have a presentation for the Everyday Hero, Dr. Brummett.
Thank you very much. I would like to ask Amanda Whitney, Brenda Zwill, and Amy Inzero to come on up to right in front of the room for a presentation. You have been nominated as an Everyday Hero by the Elizabeth Green office staff, and we do understand that, well, right over here, that Mr. Marciano is online watching, on location. And also you were nominated by Dan Valega, Katrina Bodwin, and Michael Grzybowskis. So here's what they had to say. The Elizabeth Green office staff would like to nominate third grade teacher Amanda Whitney, instructional coach Brenda Zwill, and reading language arts consultant Amy Inzero. One of our students and his brother, who is at Martin Kellogg, suffered a tragic parent loss at the start of the school year. They all sprung into action in various ways to support the students and family outside of the classroom. Amanda, who had both students here at Green, chaired a staff collection to get students items that they might need to be supported at home during this difficult time. Amanda was able to make 2 string bags and a basket filled with home items, snacks, treats, toys, and gift cards. Brenda and Amy collaborated together to find resources that they had to find a way to cheer the students up and his brother, and to showcase our love for them and their family. Knowing the boys' love for basketball, they were able to secure a package of goodies directly from the Boston Celtics. This package even included a signed team basketball. The boys were gifted the ball and the Celtics goodies at the time and were over the moon shocked and overjoyed by the items and their significance. The office had the pleasure of speaking with mom and grandma of these students many times throughout the years. With how heavy things have been for them, they are very appreciative of everything E-Green has done for them. It is obvious in their words of thanks, many, many tears and many hugs given to anyone who's willing to accept them. Amanda, Brenda, and Amy all took their own time to go above and beyond to think of the family by organizing collections, shopping, sending emails, and making calls. We feel their heartfelt and positive impact will be felt by both students and their family for many years to come. They are true everyday heroes to all of us. And come on up forward here for a photo op. Thank you both. Now, don't, you come back to your seat, but there'll be a little more commentary about you.
The other thing I'd love to share is that Martin Kellogg did help in our efforts also. So I'd just love to give them a shout out for working with us to make these things happen. So thank you to them too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Keeps on the line.
Mr. Marciano, would you like to say anything about these lovely ladies? He left the meeting.
Maybe he. Oh,
He
there you go.
just came
Yeah.
back.
You know how these things go, in and out with the internet issues.
Mr. Marciano, are you?
Yeah, sorry about that. I hit the wrong button. My
No
bad.
problem.
I'm having internet issues too. So yes, I would love to say some things. I'm so appreciative to have these ladies who led the effort in a very tragic circumstance in supporting the students and providing both students, because we've had both students through their experiences here at Elizabeth Green, and have been really close with the family. And unfortunately, Green has experienced quite a few of these circumstances. Well, not quite a few, but a few of these circumstances. And I really appreciate what they have done. I think the family has appreciated it. I think the office communicated that very well. And I think this is just one of the many strengths of our community at eGreen. When there's a need, we come together and provide all the support we can to make the best experience possible for the student, and in this case, the family as well.
Thank you. And I'll open up to board comments if anyone has any. Mary.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I can't tell you how appreciative and how touched I am by this presentation and the actions that you took. My kids are eGreen kids a long time ago, and Martin Kellogg kids as well. And I always knew that the people that worked in that building were special, and you are such a wonderful example of that. So many times we talk about academics and how we support kids academically, and the love and the support that we are providing for them emotionally is, even in some respects, so much more important. So from the bottom of my heart, I'm deeply, deeply grateful, and thank you very much for your support and your continued support of our kids.
Mr. Sharma.
I want to echo what Marie said, and I want to really thank you for, you are true heroes, and thank you for going above and beyond. So I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Ms. Beaver. Yeah, I just wanted to echo the sentiments. I think, well, I know that Brenda and Amy, I've seen them at many PTA meetings too, so I know they go above and beyond outside of school all the time. I know the school hour is just probably so much smaller than what you do outside. But I just want to say, I think, one of the mottos used at the high school is family of learners. And I think that's applicable to all our schools, really creating a family environment and really treating all of our students as one's family and when we lose family members. So I think, thank you for providing that as one family would, and for helping our students. Like we talk about this award, it's always the things that go unrecognized but help them through their everyday. Maybe it's not just, hey, I helped you get this, A on a test or something, but this is like the core things that we love to highlight. So I always love this award, but I think it's really special to highlight the things that you do to make the classroom better that maybe aren't the academic parts. So congratulations, obviously well-deserved, and so glad that the office staff recognized as well. So congratulations and thank you for all your efforts. Ms. Carr.
Words can never express how much we appreciate all you do. Teaching is hard in itself, and you guys, are going above and beyond, and it's making such an impact in their lives. So thank you, and I'm glad you guys are being recognized.
I'll just say congratulations, thank you for everything you do. It's definitely very meaningful just to hear these stories and know that, like Jessica said, it's outside the classroom really too that you're making an impact. So we appreciate you and congratulations on your award. Okay. Now it is time for public participation. So if you are in the room, you can come to the table, or if you're online, raise your hand. Please state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes to speak. If you'd like, there's no number. Oh, it's here. If you'd like to call in, the number is 860-665-8659. Seeing none, we can move on. We have our consent agenda, so we have 2 minutes to approve. We can do them both at once, right?
Yes.
Someone would like to read a motion? Mr. Holloran, would you read the motion? Do you have the motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from December 13th, 2023 from the regular meeting.
Second.
We can do both at once. Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All right, Mr. Holloran, can you do the second one?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the meetings of the January 10th, 2024 regular meeting.
Second. Any discussion? In favor? Aye. Thank you. Okay, moving on to a superintendent of schools report. We have some special guests here today, so I'll turn it over to Dr. Brummett.
Yes, I think everyone noticed we have some awesome students here from John Patterson Elementary School with their official shirts on. And I would like to introduce, I will say in advance, Melissa Delaney, who is the student council coordinator, could not be here this evening. She had a family emergency. However, we are fortunate to have school principal, Mr. Gatos, here, and I'm going to turn the mic over to him. And we have a presentation about all the wonderful things that our student council at John Patterson does. And then I think at the end, there might be some sort of special guest joining us.
Good evening, everybody. First and foremost, thank you for giving us the opportunity to highlight John Patterson School and especially our amazing student council. Thank you to the families who gave up some of your evening to be here. That's incredibly special for all of us. So thank you for doing that. One bit of disclosure, if you see at the top of the screen there, there was overwhelming pressure at John Patterson today from both students and staff to have Patty, our mascot, join us. Me being a little worried that I did not approve that through the board and Dr. Brummett ahead of time, and loving my job, I told Patty that Patty was more than welcome to join from my office tonight. So that way that ensures Patty is on Patty's best behavior, and I don't need to worry about what Patty may do during this presentation due to the excitement. So Patty's very excited to join us, and it has become a very important part of our student council. At John Patterson, our student council has really become the heart and soul of our school. Special thanks to Melissa Delaney, who's our student council advisor, who runs the show with these amazing students day in and day out. It's far too often that we hear all the things that students can't do and all of the things that, the misbehavior and all of the negative things about kids. When you spend some time with the students that are involved in our student council, and you see former members of student council, it is evident that we're in great hands moving forward. And being around these great young people every day certainly gives us that confidence. At John Patterson, our student council allows us the opportunity to really build some skills in kids in a manner that's not a part of the regular school day. And I think that's one very important thing to notice and recognize, that this is something these amazing kids do not have to do. It's something they want to do. And every year we hold elections and we give speeches, and I wish every child could be on student council. but they give their time to make our school community a better place. And they do it willingly, and they put a lot of effort into it. And this is a small representation of the larger group, and they should be commended for that. So we spend a lot of time being able to build their communication, their leadership, and their organizational skills. And that's what all of the activities are revolved around. So this evening, our amazing leadership, now these are third and fourth graders from John Patterson School. We have Addie Silver, we have Anthony Coltrera, Elena Savignano, Opal Bugie, and William O'Corey here with us tonight. And they serve as the leadership of our group. Now, there are representatives from every single classroom from grades K through 4. So that's a pretty large group, and these are the leaders of the group. So tonight, Addie's going to talk a little bit about the citizenship aspect of the John Patterson Student Council, meaning everybody's kind of responsible for our day-to-day, and it's this group that tries to bring that out of them. Anthony's going to talk a little bit about the leadership that all of these fine young boys and girls present to our school and the roles and responsibilities with that. Elena's going to talk about their service to John Patterson School. Their job is not easy. We expect a lot of them. The school truly belongs to them. We are just there to serve them, and they drive a lot of the initiatives. Now, when one of them or Mrs. Delaney comes in my office, that may be part of the reason of my lack of hair. I get very nervous about what they say, but ultimately our job is to support what they want for the culture of John Patterson School. Opal is going to talk about our service to our community, as we are a service group, and we've done a lot for the town of Newington and surrounding organizations. And William's going to talk about our school spirit, because at the end of the day, these fine young boys and girls and all of our staff are very proud of John Patterson School, and we want to highlight that and have a little fun doing it. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Addie, and she's going to tell you a little bit about the citizenship aspect of Student Council.
Hello, my name is Addie Silver, and I'm the president of the John Patterson Student Council. Thank you for inviting us here tonight. Being a good citizen is very important at John Patterson School. We wanted this to be our theme for our student council this year. At our student council inauguration, we read, "What can a citizen do as a school?" This book helped us understand that we can all be good citizens and are all responsible for making the world around us better. As a student council, we want all of our classmates to know that everyone can make a difference at John Patterson, and we are all responsible for making John Patterson a great place.
Thank you, Addie. Great job. Now I'll turn it over to Anthony to talk about leadership.
Hi, my name is Anthony Coltrera, and I am the vice president of John Patterson Student Council. As officers of the Student Council, we have the responsibility of being good role models and leaders. A couple of weeks ago, our Student Council officers attended the Connecticut Association of Schools Elementary Leadership Conference. We were with the officers from other schools in Newington and Student Council representatives from around Connecticut. Throughout the day, we had a chance to participate in many activities. They focused on helping us become better citizens and leaders.
Anthony, awesome job. Elena will now talk about the service to John Patterson School.
Hello, my name is Elena Savignano, and I am the secretary of the John Patterson Student Council. As Addie mentioned earlier, it is our responsibility to work towards making John Patterson a better place every day. At our monthly meetings, we discuss how we can be good citizens when at school. We regularly talk about our expected behaviors in the classroom, in the hallways, at lunch, and at recess. We then come up with ways to encourage and promote our expected behaviors. We help design a school family lesson about our expected behaviors. As a result of this lesson, we were able to help create updated rules and expectations during lunch and recess.
Awesome job, Elena. Thank you. Opal will talk a little bit about our service to the overarching community.
Hello, my name is Opal Bugie, and I'm the treasurer of the John Patterson Student Council. A part of being a good citizen is helping others. Each year, our Student Council selects fundraisers that will help others. Last year, we raised over $3,000 to support the Newington Volunteer Fire Department. We helped promote autism awareness and now have our new school logo on a fire truck. This year, we participated in Connecticut Children's PJ Day for the kids. We raised over $1,400 for Connecticut Children's Hospital. We are currently working with the Student Council to pick our community service project for the spring.
Opal, thank you. And just to draw your attention to the presentation, these folks were a part of it last year. An amazing effort from the John Patterson community, raised a little over $3,000. And if you see the autism awareness fire truck in town, that was our donation to this fire truck. One, to help the operation of the overall department, but also to become a part of this amazing truck. And our logo, our new logo, is on the side of the door because of the great work of these fine young boys and girls. So if you see that truck in town, Patterson's a part of it. Okay, over to William, who's going to talk about school spirit.
Hello, my name is William McCory, and I am the classroom representative of for Miss Doobie's class. At John Patterson, we like to have fun too. Last year, we created Patty, the John Patterson Panther. We worked with our entire school community to come up with and vote on possible mascots. Out of all of the suggestions, Patty was the winner. As a student council, we are responsible for creating our spirit days. We ask all of our teachers and other students for suggestions. Then we work together to pick what spirit days we will have. At our next meeting, we will be picking our spirit days for the rest of the school year. Stay tuned.
Thank you, William. Great job. And that's just a little glimpse into the day-to-day of the amazing work that the John Patterson Student Council does and how they drive the culture and climate of our building. So thank you for the opportunity for having us here tonight. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Gatos, and our student council leaders from John Patterson. Now, does Patty have anything to add?
Patty.
He just wants to say, I think he's a man of few words, if I'm not mistaken. But we appreciate that. And as I think everyone in the audience can see, that the student council is such a vibrant aspect of our schools, and each school does it a little differently. We heard from Reynolds last meeting, but what I've noticed and been to their ceremonies and seen some of their fundraising in action is it's a very well-run organization. Ms. Delaney deserves a lot of accolades for that, and I'll turn it back over to board chair Ronnie.
Thank you. Do any of our board members have comments or questions? Jessica.
Obviously, I'm going to have to say something as a former student council president too. So, Ms. President, nice to meet you as well. You're welcome in the seat anytime. I just wanted to say you guys did an incredible job. Incredible oration of your words. You had great speeches and you're representing us so well out in the community. I mean, these pictures probably don't do it justice, but all the leadership conferences you're going to, all of the community service you're already doing so much more than I think any of us did at your age. So congratulations on that. And we are so excited for all the work you're doing. And Opal, I work for the treasurer. So if you want to come by anytime as well, because it seems like you're raising a lot of money here, right? And you're counting a lot of money. So, if you want to come to my office anytime, let me know. And also, any of you want to take a seat at this table and do our budget, happily would, have you here. So congratulations to you all, an incredible job. And to Mr. Gatos and staff and to your parents, congratulations. This is just a great way to represent our community. We're very proud of our students. So congratulations.
Yes. Brittany, go ahead.
Thank you all for coming. You guys should be so proud of yourself. You did a great job presenting. We learned a lot. You guys are fundraising. You're so involved in your schools, and that's so important. I was vice president of student council, so I was there too one day. But I did it middle school, high school. I wish I had it when I was your grade level. It's so good. Keep up with it. And thank you so much for coming.
Thank you again. We're so proud of you. I'm really, really struck by the amount of money that you guys have raised for various charities. And I, for one, have seen the fire truck many times. What I didn't realize is that John Patterson was so wonderfully represented there. So thank you. And every time our volunteer firefighters respond to anything in our community, you guys and your hard work will be part of that as well. And that's a gift that keeps giving to all of us. So thank you. We are so proud of you, and keep up the good work and the leadership. It's so important, not just for your school community, but for our entire community. So thank you again.
Mr. Sharma.
I just want to thank the entire student council. Like, thank you for coming by and thank you for all the work you do, and also the principal. So thank you so much. And this is really inspiring. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Mr. Halloran.
Hi, I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person. Just some truly great work coming out of this school from the exposure I've had with it this year between PTA meetings and events, and just to see how much work has been done in terms of almost reinventing the school and redefining what it means to be part of that community is big. And I can't even go over all of the things that I am inspired by that came out of this school. To all of the student council members who bravely spoke and showed up today. I myself was also a former student council president, and I was the captain of the safety patrol, but it all started from one place. I wanted to help people. And I was about your age when I really learned what the term service meant, and that was to help other people and to find ways that we're all connected, and to do the hard work and to make the extra effort to bring that community together and realize that we're all connected. And to serve really made me feel like I had a purpose, and I'm still doing it today. So keep it up. People need people like you. Thank you so much.
Everybody said very nice things, and apparently we have a lot of former presidents and vice presidents. Very amazing. So yeah, thank you for coming tonight. We very much appreciate everything that you're doing for the school and for your community. Outside of your school, you're doing a lot to show that you're great leaders and setting a good example for everybody. So thank you for coming, and I hope you can get home and say hi to Patty for us when you see him next. Good to see you online. Thank you so much.
Just a quick reminder to moms and dads that this meeting is recorded and we'll post it probably online tomorrow. So if you want to relive tonight's speeches, you will be able to do so. You guys are going to be on tape so we can see it again and again. Thank you so much.
All right, moving on to new business. We have a report on enrollment projections for 24-25 school year. Mr. Parisi.
We'll kick it off to Mr. Parisi, and he'll go through our projections, which again are just projections, but it'll at least give the board a good sense of where we're headed for next year. I think this came up at our joint meeting, wondering what that looks like. And this will be something that we'll talk about frequently through the budget process. So this is kind of another preamble to the budget process. Mr. Farisi.
Thank you, Dr. Brummett. And thank you, Board of Education, for giving me the opportunity to kind of share with you, as Dr. Brummett mentioned, what we project for next year. Projections, as you know, go back and forth a little bit, but we're usually very close. And so annually, when we take a look at, what did we project last year and where did that fall on October 1st when we have to report it to the state annually? We've been about 5 students plus or minus every year. So we're in a good range generally for projections. And I'll share with you some of the variables that exist with those projections and the ways in which we come up with those projections. But if you don't have it in front of you, it's the report F1 in your packet, if you want to get that to be available. But I would just share, I open up the report with informing you that one of the companies that we contract with to help support us with the projections is a company called NESDEC. They're the New England Association of Schools and Councils that do the study for most of the New England schools. So they're one of the more prominent industry kind of leaders for education that make projections and help support enrollment projections for schools. We've been using them for decades, so we continue to work with them. And they take a lot of factors into consideration. And I put in your packet some of the new developments that are coming into fruition here in Newington. And so they kind of consolidate all that information and put it together. There are some things that the report cannot contain because they cannot predict how many seats we might make available for things like open choice declarations for students coming from Hartford to Newington. They don't know and cannot predict how many students might be retained at the end of the year in high school and have to do a 5th year of high school. So those things are things that we have to look at, trend data and some analysis that we do to kind of embed that into the projections. So you'll see that in the report as well. But I would share with you that there is projected a total of 3,854 students through NESDEC, and that's from 3,871, which would be a total of 17 less students coming in next year. But then when we start to bring in those other variables that they cannot predict, which would be the 25-seat declaration for open choice students, the 10 students that are projected to potentially need a 5th year. And again, I say potentially because that may or may not happen. We don't know, but we have to think about that as a possibility. Once we start putting all that together, we start looking at what the real projections might look like. It does look like more, and this is probably about the 6th bullet down, that about 3,889 students would be projected for next year, which is a total of 19 over where we are to date. So that is what we are looking at if all those things come to fruition, meaning all of our open choice seats get filled and those students do remain for a 5th year. Some may graduate, and that's wonderful. Some students may not choose Newington. Sometimes that happens, so we don't fill all 25 seats. So those are just some of the variables we have to realize exist. And then some students and families move in and out of Newington, right? And that happens. So we just, all those elements come into play. We also have something unique this year, moving into next year that we're preparing for this year, which is the new legislation around the kindergarten age change. So now that students are eligible in September 1, there is an option for parents to fill out a waiver to have their students come who are under the age of 5 to attend kindergarten. We are building out a process right now and engaging in a process with families where we will assess students who believe that their child is ready for kindergarten, but they are under age 5. We don't know. They have till February 1 to let us know that, and then we'll start the assessments in February. So we will know more. The assessment goes through March 5th. So around the following week, we will know more about our kindergarten enrollment, which families might have opportunities for preschool in our district instead of kindergarten based on this new age change requirement. And that will help us, again, determine how many kindergartens we'll need at each school and how many preschools we'll need at each school. What I can tell you about those projections is we do not anticipate a need to reduce staff due to this legislation, we do anticipate a potential need to reallocate staff. So maybe a possibility could look like a current kindergarten teacher might have to teach preschool for a year until what will happen is after year one, it'll kind of work itself out, the numbers, and we'll be able to, see a greater normalcy going forward after year one of implementation. So that is something that is new to the projection process that we are working with, but we feel like we have a solid process for the kindergarten waiver assessment protocols, and looking forward to engaging in that in later February, early March. Right now, I might have shared some numbers last time we met about how many folks have requested a waiver. We are up to, I think, around 35 now, and it closes at the end of this month. So we're getting about one a day almost. And so if that keeps going, we'll see where we end, and we'll go from there. What I also share with you about the fourth bullet up from the bottom would be the anticipated retirements that we have for next year. Those are important to staffing for next year because we need to understand who's leaving us due to retirement, who might we have to replace, what are the opportunities there to reallocate staff due to attrition, right? So when folks retire, we don't just automatically look and say, oh, let's replace that position. We look at the totality of everything. What does our enrollment look like in those areas? What are the current needs of the district? Does it still make sense to have that position, or should we reallocate that to something differently? Or can we reduce in that area? So when you look and see the positions that are open, it's about 4 classroom teacher positions, 1 special education position, and then what we call a multilingual teacher, or might have heard of it as an English language learner teacher position. So those are the ones that positions that are due and set to retire at the end of the year. What we know, and you'll see this in the bullet below, is that the ESSER grant funding also runs out at the end of this year. So we have to look at some current staff that we have and reallocate those staff because those positions are going away. So what we do already know is that 2 of these classroom positions will be backfilled by ESSER grant positions that are going away. Those are the 2 math intervention positions that I spoke to you about, I think, when we met with the joint town council and board meeting. So those would be 2 positions that we're already looking to reallocate into these 2 classroom retirements. So that is good that we have availability and space for them, and we would not have to perhaps non-renew a non-tenured teacher, right? We try to avoid that at all costs because the staff that we've hired, we've invested a lot into, and they're doing fantastic. And most of them are doing fantastic for us, and we want to retain these staff. So there are opportunities right there. And what you'll see further in the report is where the current number of staff that we have now, you'll see our projection for next year is to reduce that by 2. So what you know of this year, the current number that I presented to you last meeting, but it's also in this packet, and I'll share with you where that is in a moment, we're reducing next year by 2 staff. We are going to continue to keep our eye out to see if there may be an opportunity to reduce further. There are maybe some areas, if projections continue to go as planned, that we might have an opportunity to reduce some areas at the elementary level due to class size. Class size might not be as large as we anticipate, and we're going to keep a close eye on that. Some of that will be predicated upon kindergarten and what those numbers tell us. And some of it would be predicated upon, to be sincere and frank, where we are with the budget. If we are in a place where we need to make very difficult considerations, we will need to consider reducing classroom teachers to meet budgetary allocation, right? What is allocated to us in the budget? That is what I was trying to say. So that would be something that we would have to consider moving forward. And there are a few areas that we've identified would be areas that we would have to have considerate conversations around. And that would be something we would consider. What you do need to know is that in order to do that, it may mean that non-tenured teachers would have to get notices that they potentially may not get renewed. Legally, we're obligated to engage in that process prior to May 1st. So I just want the board to be keenly aware of our legal obligations to staff, in that if we were to potentially non-renew some staff, because we had to do a reduction in force to meet budgetary constraints, then we would have to do that prior to May 1st. Okay. All right. So with all that, I would just share with you, if you flip to page 2, I did give you a quick summation or a table grid of all the schools in the current teacher and student ratio for class size that you would see. So, oh, thank you. It's up on the board right now. It's wonderful. I did highlight in red one area that is kind of like a hot spot for me. When we talk about, Steve, you know, what's an appropriate class size? I don't have a magic number that I can give you, but what I could tell you is a kindergarten teacher would say to all of us in this room right now, 21 is pretty high. And that's just what we're projecting right now. And students could move in, right? But again, if we apply the thinking that we are right now in a process of people applying for a waiver, and that might reduce our kindergarten enrollment numbers, right now we can't make any decisions based off that. We still have to let the process play out. It's just something that we keep our eye on. And I want the board to be aware, we keep our eye on things. We are diligently looking at it. We will engage in the waiver process, and we will determine if those numbers are going to come to fruition. And then that would be an area that we would have to maybe manage through maybe a reallocation of staff down over to kindergarten to make that 4 classroom teachers opposed to 3, so we can reduce those sizes a little bit. That would also be where we would have some open choice declarated seats, so that way the class sizes wouldn't be also remarkably low compared to the other schools. So we work in those types of ways. I'm trying to just give you kind of a little bit, like, shed a light onto the process that we use to make these decisions. With all that being said, the table below does show what I presented to you last week of our current state of affairs. So at the very bottom in that kind of lower right-hand box, you'll see 368.5 staff. If you go, that's what we have currently. If you go to the next table, in that lower portion, you'll see 366.5 less staff. So we are reducing by 2. Again, no one is losing their job. Those 2 interventionists are going to be reallocated into the classroom. So they will have a position with us, as they did actually prior to being interventionists. They were in the classroom. So, you know, we'll keep that going. On the next page, you'll just see the most current projections and considerations for the new developments in town. Those are updated this year. As of January 12th, I worked with the town side to really just get an update on where all the construction is, right? So where they are in the process of construction for all of these new developments. And this would be the updated information that I can share with you at this time. So currently there is no significant impact on the Newington Public Schools. Next year, there isn't projected to be a huge impact, but it's going to start next year, where we will start getting students and families enrolling in the Newington Public Schools based on the new developments. And then in future years, it will continue to grow. But again, the NESDEC company that we use is aware of this and puts those into their projections. So it wouldn't be as if, you know, this is outside of that and we have to really plan more so. Is that fair? So lastly, if you go to what I would call your kind of really long spreadsheets, I try to be highly transparent and just share with you, like in every building, you know, where are our teachers, at what grade level, and what is the student ratio? And I do that giving you projected from this year to next year. So it may be a little hard for you to see, but I'd love to just kind of give you a glance at the data on this table. So what you can see here is, if you look at just kindergarten alone, you'll see the 2023, 2024. This is the current teacher ratio, the student ratio in the classroom. There's 48 students at Elizabeth Green right now sitting in kindergarten. Does that make sense? Next year, this is what's projected. So again, we would anticipate 3 teachers because at 55 students, it's projected to go up. Again, and in the kindergarten waiver, we'll see, but it's projected to go up. They can manage 18 to 19 students. Thank you, I'm sorry for that delay in their classroom. So that's kind of the methodology we look at and we use to make determinations on, okay, what's that future going to look like and where might we need to really consider either reallocation or redeployment of staff because we either have too high of enrollment or maybe too low of enrollment. So we need to reallocate and readjust. And this is the process that, you know, I started, I think this right when the report came out back in November, and I just keep on it every month. We just keep looking at it and really, as this goes forward, as new decisions come about between the kindergarten waiver, between the open choice seat declaration, between budget decisions that you all make here at this table, that continuously influences how this chart will continue to evolve as we go forward in the process. That was for the elementary school. The next 2 tables are the middle level, and then on the very bottom is the high school, and then our open choice seat declaration and some other ancillary areas that we have students enrolled, which would be our transition academy. We have students who are outplaced. We have students who attend correct magnet schools, VOAG schools, things like that. And I put all that in here. So we just try to be as forthcoming as possible to give you all the information that we have, so you can see where we are. So that way, when we get into budget deliberations and we talk about impact sometimes on that, or impact on enrollment, or impact on the kindergarten waiver, when we have those discussions, we'll be able to refer back to this and how that may or may not be influencing things. So with all that, I've said a lot. I'll pause and just open it up to any potential questions or comments that you might have.
Yeah, thank you. Just going back all the way to the beginning, question 1 about the kindergarten waiver. I know you said deadline is February 1st. Is there like a trickle-in period we'll have, or hard and fast?
Is there a what?
Like a hard and fast deadline? Like, just anticipate some might forget. I know we're putting out as many notifications as possible, but like, is there, like, those numbers are going to be those numbers, and then we have the evaluation till March 5th. I'm just wondering, are there going to be more applications as people recognize that, or
Right.
and how lenient we are? I'm not saying like judging either way. I'm just trying to figure out when people go, oh no.
Right. And it's difficult for planning purposes,
Right.
Especially if, 100 people say, oh no, versus, 1 or 2. And so we have to weigh that out. And that is something we're looking at and we're considering, how we will manage that. So we understand, but right now it is a hard deadline of February 1st.
Is there like do we have an estimated amount of the ones that are still quote unquote outstanding, like the eligibility? Nope.
We do not know. What we also know is about a week or 2 after that, kindergarten registration opens up.
Right. That's where I was kind of going with this. I'm like,
we have to engage in that process too. And that's why these deadlines are very important to families. And I would urge that of our community and families that believe potentially that, they want their child assessed for a waiver into kindergarten to please try to stick to the timeline. So that way we can do our due diligence and ensure that we engage in a process. So that way it aligns with everything else going on. Because then we have kindergarten visitation day and a lot of things start coming up very quickly in the spring.
Okay, thank you. And just 2 other comments. I just thank you for pointing out the budgetary concerns. I think I'll stress, I think our priority will obviously be not reducing staff or having to put anyone on notice. I remember, I think the first year I was on, we maybe had to do that. Yep. And it's not fun. So obviously recognizing we're going to have multiple challenges this year, but seeing what we can do. And just in that budgetary mindset, I think 2 considerations are, is there anything we can do actionable at this time? When we talk about budgeting, I always want to think of sustainable budgeting in terms of the next couple of years. That list is, I know that probably circulated on social media, but that list is scary, of 225. That's a rough guess. I mean, I won't say it's a magical number, but we just don't know who would move into these developments. That's just a lot to consider.
are there contingency plans we need to start thinking about now to anticipate that type of increase in students? One, that's not like a question, it's more rhetorical. And two, I would just be curious, I know this has come up at other towns' budgets, but the impact of the magnet schools on our budget. Just curious. I know it's probably an obligation, but just kind of how obviously we get money from open choice, but we pay out the magnet school tuition. Yes.
We do. We're waiting, and I think I've mentioned this at our joint meeting, that the state was supposed to allocate money for next year, for this year to for next year to offset our magnet school tuition obligation, but they have not indicated how much.
Okay.
And that puts Lou in a position to kind of have to budget for what we typically have to pay. But yes, we are responsible for paying tuition for most magnet kids, not all. Some magnet schools do not charge. A rough estimate is about $7,000 per child. And that's times, upwards of 100 students, or not quite that many, because many of those are not for pay. But we typically have to allocate in our budget almost $500,000 for magnet school tuition. As to the point of how much impact will we see from these housing developments I put back up on the screen, it is really a guesstimate. As you can see that for each development, 3 schools are impacted pretty much by level. So if you figure that those kids will be sprinkled among those 3 schools, we don't anticipate a major impact. But if some of these estimates are wrong, or they tend to impact one school over the other, that could have staffing implications. Or if there are any high need students that are part of that mix. I think, which development Steve is going to complete first? Is that the Cedar Point? So that this will impact next school year with the guesstimate of 22.9 students. Don't know what a 0.9 student looks like, but you can see those 3 schools are potentially the impact. And again, if a family moves in, we don't know the age range. These apartments, I think, are 2-bedroom. So I don't think it'll be huge families, but there could conceivably be families of a couple of kids. The rest are still haven't started yet. And I think TPZ tonight might be talking about some more. So, it is a work in progress, but we will keep the board fully informed. And if we find a way to get more accurate estimates as these apartments or housing developments come to fruition, we will do so.
Thank you. And, obviously they see how incredible our students are. Everyone wants to move here already. I mean, come on. So.
Well, we also saw that Zillow report about people looking at housing in Newington. So we're all proud of that.
All right. There was another one too, where we were number 4, only one in New England. So Newington is pretty hot.
Thank you, John Patterson, Student Council. Yes.
Must be those 2.
I just have a question kind of along the lines of the new developments. You mentioned that the NASDAQ report does include them, but on the last page of that report, or one of the pages, it says like the number of building permits or whatever that they looked at, and it didn't seem to line up with how many we actually do have in Newington. So can you clarify that?
I can. So they're aware. We actually sent them this document too in advance. It was the numbers that we're provided last spring. So a couple of the permits might not have been given to them that were on here. But they generally do. So some of these are anticipated, to come, and the permits aren't approved yet. So they can't put in fully everything yet because it isn't totally ready, but they do have the ones in that would be most impactful upcoming. And so they do have those.
Thank you. Mr. Sharma, did you have a question?
Yeah, just a quick question. Can you just clarify, like, in terms of like the waiver, what, I mean, I know there was a change in the age. Can you just clarify what that means? And the second question is, how many 5th-year students did we have like last year? Any idea? 5th-year students last year?
Yes, we had 11. 11, yeah. So we had 11, so that's that. And then the kindergarten waiver, what happened is there was legislation passed where students who turn 5 September 1st are now allowed into kindergarten. So September 1st now is the cutoff day for age 5 and above to enter into kindergarten. Included in that legislation was if your child is under the age of 5 and you feel as if they are ready for kindergarten, you can apply for a waiver. And the district is responsible to offer an assessment of your child to determine if your child is ready or not for kindergarten, if you apply for the waiver. There has to be a written application process, which we have online right now. And then we have to do an assessment by law.
So before this change, what was the age? It was
December 1st. Or January 1st, I'm sorry, December 31st, January 1st, yes. Was the 5 or older.
okay. So I get it. Thank you.
Ms. Carr?
Not sure if you know this, but do you know why the legislation pushed it through to this change?
Sure. We were one of the only states that around in the country that was going January 1st, and they found developmentally that it was appropriate, and that's what other states have been doing for a while. Dr. Brummett, would you add to that at all?
That is true, that we're on the late end. There's also data to suggest that kids who start kindergarten when they're age 5 versus age 4 tend to do better. And many early childhood teachers appealed to the state either through their union or other mechanisms that they were thinking that, especially since COVID, kids were just coming in unprepared for kindergarten. So I think it was a combination of those factors, but all being equal, we are, up until very recently, one of the latest deadlines to enter kindergarten in the nation. So now we're kind of on par with Massachusetts and other communities nearby.
Can I just ask a math question? On the first page, it says that with the potential for the waiver, it says applying the new kindergarten age enrollment changes, it goes from 269 to 180. So that 180 is assuming that nobody gets the waiver and only 5-year-olds start kindergarten.
Right. So when the question was, actually, there was a question earlier, how many students potentially could apply for the waiver? And I think I answered that we might not know. We do. It's 89 students. 89 students are eligible for the waiver. Right now we have 35 applicants. So yeah, it could go up. So yeah, thank you very much, Mrs. Ferrari.
Though it is an estimate, because if the kids
Yeah.
are not with us yet, we don't know their birthday.
Correct.
Law of averages,
Yeah.
kids hopefully are born sprinkled throughout the calendar, but we just don't know. I had
There
2
might be
December
a
birthdays,
A
but
lot of November babies. So then in the long spreadsheet, then if you look at the kindergarten, if you add up all the kindergarten students, it comes to more than 180. So this is assuming,
Correct.
right? So this
Right.
is like worst case scenario.
That's what it would be without the waiver. NESDEC didn't know about the waiver when they did the report. We didn't give that information. We didn't have it. They didn't have it. So we're giving you what the projection was. Again, as I mentioned a couple times, kindergarten will be predicated on the waiver, and we'll watch that carefully. We'll see what happens. But again, the staffing wouldn't change. It just might be one less kindergarten teacher, and that would be one more in preschool potentially. So we will continue to monitor that and give the board updates on where we are in that process and what we're seeing and finding from the waiver process.
Thank you. Ms. Beatrice.
More questions about preschool.
Sure.
So during that assessment process, what happens if a child is deemed not ready for
Mhm.
kindergarten? And then what is our obligation? Do we refer them to our own preschool, or do we offer choice to parents, and how is
All
that
of the
addressed?
above. So great question. So yes, if a student doesn't meet eligibility criteria, the very first thing we do is encourage them to enroll in our preschool. But we also share with them all of the surrounding preschools in Newington, and they do have that option.
And our preschools are fee? Is there a tuition for our preschools?
There is a minimal fee, and I know Dr. Brummett knows the fee structure better than I do, so I will turn it over to her.
We are, it's gonna, maybe Lou can help me with this because he helps me do the billing, but it's approximately, we're much lower than any pre-K in town, I believe, for a month of full day, full week. It's just shy of $700 per month, and then about half that amount for the half-day programs. What we've also done for parents who are on that cusp of their child has a later birthday and they are applying for the waiver, we're encouraging them to fill out registration or enrollment for pre-K so that they have a backup plan. So we do believe our pre-K registration is way up right now. Close to 80 kids have registered for next year. We believe some of those are also in the hopper for a waiver so that they've hedged their bets. They've got two places to be, which is a smart move, and we've encouraged it. So, but yes, in the course of when parents are notified of the waiver status, they will be offered information on all the preschools in town. And also, we have notified all the preschools in town of our waiver process. So they're also advertising it within their own structures. We've blanketed senior center, library, every pediatrician, every daycare. We've done hopefully a good job of notifying everybody.
And were a large number of kids decide, a large number of parents decide to keep their kids within the public schools? Do we have the adequate space? It sounds like we have the adequate staffing, teachers wise.
Yes.
If we were to get that bubble, it wouldn't negatively impact.
We're not anticipating that. In fact, if we do have to reduce one kindergarten class, we would then hopefully create a pre-K classroom in virtually the same space.
Right.
And we've had parents also who've called and said, you know what, I'm not going to apply for the waiver. I think my child's not ready. So at that point, we just say right into the pre-K program. So there's been a lot of different conversations going on. So what Steve's procedure that he's created has kind of at least got those parents in line to be for the assessment process. And it's a very comprehensive process. We're doing about 10 kids per session. And they'll be meeting with staff and going through some developmentally appropriate activities. It's all staffed by our pre-K, kindergarten, and OT, PT staff. And over 4 different sessions, parents can pick one session and be offered that. During the screening as well, parents will meet with a principal, kind of hear what's kindergarten all about. The nurse will be there to talk about medical requirements. So the parents will also get quite a bit of information just by showing up on those days. So we're hoping that the process really is going to meet the needs of all of our stakeholders.
Wonderful, thank you.
Mr. Halloran?
Thank you, Mr. Farisi, for all of that data. I love data. I think just kind of for a point of clarification on the record, this is a one-time waiver for this year. After this year, there won't be a waiver process to get your 4-year-old into kindergarten, correct?
I appreciate that question. That is not correct.
Okay.
The waiver, the legislation right now currently reads that this is an annual process.
Thank you. I just think it's important for the public to know that this isn't a one and done, so panic. I will say in support of the preschool, my daughter Rose was the first grade at Ruth Chafee, and I cannot speak highly enough about it. It does wonders, prepared her to be in the school system. Excellent experience. So a little biased, but that it really worked out. The NPS preschool system worked out for me, so I appreciate it. And then coming back to kind of the staffing issues you saw in kindergarten, the little area you had in red where the student to teacher ratio was a bit off. What do we think caused that? Was that an influx or a staffing shortage?
That's just what potentially could be projected for next year. So NESDEC projected those numbers for us for next year. And it ended up being about 21 per class. So we currently have 3 teachers in that grade level, and it's meeting the population perfectly right now. But if we do meet that anticipated rise in student enrollment at that school in kindergarten, then we would have to relook at that. Again, through the waiver process, that may not come to fruition. There are a lot of variables there, and we will just continue to monitor it. It's more in red, just as keep your eye on this. But
Yep.
But I think we'll be okay, and we always turn out okay.
And I think, number one, I want to appreciate your efforts for really creatively optimizing staff to avoid having to cut staff and putting what we have where we need it. I think one of the things that the NEST Act doesn't account for, it accounts for development, but it doesn't really account for that town churn. Like, you have people taking advantage of the market who are probably trying to downsize, so they move out, but then a young family moves in. So it's not just a couple kids. I think there's kind of an invisible influx we can't really anticipate and see. And right now, it looked like we're at max capacity. I think if this trends out further years, then we're going to start seeing stretched capacity. If we can't increase capacity somehow, I think that is just a concern about just making sure that there's only so much creative movement we can if we see growth coming, and growth that we know that we can't really see. So that's just a point of concern there too. And I think the last point that I wanted to make was, if you can go down a couple slides. Yes, keep going down. Yeah. Yes, this one down here, the big slide. Does this account for teachers within a potential retirement range? I think just kind of talking about information you gave previously, if we have teachers retiring, to replace those teachers is going to be a little bit more expensive because we're typically not hiring young teachers. We have to hire teachers with some credentials to backfill. So does this kind of projection forward take into account retirement as well?
It does. So of the teachers that are listed up there, we know that 4 of the retirements are classroom teachers that would fall into these buckets. 2 of those would be backfilled with the interventionist reduction that we're going to have. So those 2 retirements would be occupied by those folks. And then we do have 2 others that we would have to hire replacements for should our budget allow us to be able to do that. We will always look to find and attract the best candidates that we can within our budgetary constraints, and we look and take all that into consideration when hiring individuals.
Thank you very much.
I just have a quick question on the classroom size. I know you said earlier you don't have a magic number for ideal classroom number of students, but 24 seems pretty high, right? So that's not great, even at the higher elementary levels. Is there a state statute that says what the maximum can be?
No. Some of our surrounding districts have 30, 32.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions, comments? Okay, thank you very much for that elaborate report. And the next item on our agenda is you again, I'm sure, or Ms. Weaver, a new policy 5144.1.
I'll start and then I can kick it off to Mr. Parisi. I know we didn't have any agenda tonight, just as a committee report. We'll do that at a later date because I know we'll have another meeting in between then. But just wanted to let everyone know that on last Wednesday, the policy committee met. This is our first time meeting with this board, but this policy has kind of straddled 2 different boards. So this has already come up for discussion at the full board that was previously serving. So usually what we will do is have, just for point of order references, is we'll have a policy presented for discussion, and then at the next meeting for the full board be voted on for approval
given that this has already been a policy that has come to a full board, and we need to kind of get this passed sooner rather than later. We figured, and our policy committee met and agreed that we could probably take action on this tonight if everyone is comfortable with it. That being said, we would love your input on it. And just to give everyone some full context, this policy was reviewed by our policy committee. We went through everything and just wanted to personally say it's been a joy just by our first meeting. We went through everything word for word, line for line. That's kind of how the process works. Everyone is welcome to watch our meetings. They're open to the public. And we took a good hour on this one, I think, or hour plus. So just wanted to thank my new committee members on that. And if Mr. Fursey wants to go over the policy itself, and I'll add one last caveat is that a lot of the changes that were made were either grammatical or kind of up for interpretation on words that may be hard to, or different gauges of interpretation. But the main point of having this policy revised was due to legislation mandating that we change or add specific language. That will be probably the par for the course for the next couple ones. I know we will have a large amount of policies coming forward, so this is one of many to come. But Mr. Fursey, if you want to take away those changes.
Sure, thank you very much. And I concur. It was a pleasure working with this policy subcommittee for the first time, and we were right into it. We got deep right away, so it was fantastic. And I'm so appreciative of that, because for a policy that's already been through another subcommittee and the full board, to already look at it again and have made significant changes, I would say, is just extremely powerful to me. So thank you so much. With that being said, this is a legislatively mandated policy that we must have in our Board of Education policies. We do have to have policy around physical restraint, seclusion, and exclusionary timeout. It is never something that we want to enact, but there are times where it is necessary. And when it is, we want to make sure that we have policy that guides and directs us, and then regulation and procedures that help support it as well. But the board is responsible for the policy portion, and that's what this covers. And really, if I were to expand on what Ms. Weaver shared, I would share that this policy is derived from our attorneys, Shipman and Goodwin. So we generally take a lot of their counsel on our policy. They're some of the top experts in our state in policy development and design. And so what we did is we took what they offered, and we were able to even make it, I think, more clear and clean. And that is very important, because when staff is provided with policy, and when administrators are required to then take policy and put it into practice in their schools, the clearer it can be, the more concise it can be, the better able they are to develop and design the practices to go along with it. So with that being said, you'll see in the first paragraph some simple changes that after Board of Education, we just refer to the Board of Education as the board. And so we're clear about that throughout the document. And that was definitely an oversight from last time. In the second paragraph, we talk about staff using restraint or place a student in seclusion instead of using the term reasonable, which can be very subjective. We just felt it was appropriate to remove it. And then there was some alternative language proposed that could have been possible. And we think the language that is up front is language that we would use. And again, just using the appropriate terminology for themselves instead of himself or herself. After that, I don't believe we had any other revisions to page 1. As we go through page 2, the top part is really, again, just referring to the board. Down toward the lower midsection of this page, you'll have item B under conditions pertaining to the use of physical restraint and seclusion. And at one point, it reads that such individuals shall make a new determination every 30 minutes. That is what was recommended. The committee feels that 30 minutes is a long time to make a new evaluation of that. our recommendation is 15 minutes. We have toyed around with 10 or 15 minutes, but so that would be something that the board, we'd welcome feedback on. But I would tell you that in practice, we're constantly evaluating throughout the whole process. I don't know a time when we're not. So I think that would be our practice always. But we could have at least a point check in here as a benchmark. So that's something that if the board wanted to discuss, we are open to their feedback on that. On the next page, or this would be under C, section B under that. We did remove some language, and that's monitoring within physical proximity. We're going to monitor and we're going to be there, but you are also going to monitor by direct observation and video, period. We're going to make sure that we monitor throughout the whole thing. And that's why I come back to, we don't ever stop monitoring. So the amount of minutes is something that we could chat about. But, and then as we go further down, H at the bottom, just again refers to the board, a minor change. When you go to the next page, required training and prevention training plan, it just referred to some old dates on things. Those really aren't necessary in this policy, and we don't want anything to be confusing. We thought just eliminating that date would just clarify this and not have folks wonder, because really it didn't bring any value to the policy. And there wasn't a legislative requirement to keep that in. So I checked on all these things before we removed any words or any language, that there was no legislative requirement or law keeping it in. We're fine. And equally with the subsection A underneath that, commencing July 1, again, we don't need that. Just again, clarification. On the next page, crisis intervention team. Again, just referencing a date, and there's really no need for that. I mean, the board is going to annually require our school district to have it, period. So this is a new policy on the Board of Education. This policy currently does not exist in its manual. So referencing these dates does us no good. If we already had the policy and we were revising, maybe, but that is not this. And then under 1A, I'm sorry, A, toward the bottom of that page, we just define exclusionary timeouts, what they're used for. And we just removed language there. And that would be the totality of the additions or edits that we made. I would offer any subcommittee member to share anything if you feel like you want to further elaborate on any area that I touched upon or may have missed anything.
No, I think we all, went through it line by line. We wanted it to be as clear and concise as possible. I mean, I love reading policies and editing them. I did a few more over the weekend, but it's great that now how it's written, at least we strongly believe two people aren't going to look at it and say, well, I take it this way, I take it that way, because that's the last thing you want. You want everything to be, okay, this is how it reads, this is how we act on it. So if anyone has any questions about that.
Yes.
Is there training to the staff on this? Because this is an extensive policy.
Yes, so staff are required who engage in physical restraint, seclusion of students, or exclusionary timeout to be trained annually. There's an initial training, and then there is a refresher training. We currently have 3 staff members who are trainers of trainers. They have been trained to be trainers of this, and they actually hold the training right in this room. They hold it 3 times a year. And so I think we just finished ours. We do it toward the beginning of the year, middle of the year, and in the spring. We just finished our winter training. I actually believe one more is coming up in a week or 2 or a couple weeks. Another's coming up. So we offer 2 each time frame. So that way those who can't make the first one attend the second one. But so we know every staff member, certified staff member who is also certified to do this. They comprise a team at each school. Sometimes they're called the crisis intervention team. And again, they hold the certification to be able to do this.
Thank you. So my concern again is just for the teachers and the staff that is there some way to measure their comprehension just to make sure they know? Because I know myself, you get big policies on the police department. We used to have some of these policies that were 10 pages. And, some things this seems like a good policy. I just read it for the first time. Well, just the comprehension. Is there a way to make sure that the teachers, staff understand it? Is there a measure at the end, or at least are they able to, without embarrassment, question something they might not understand? Because this is important.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think the two ways in which I think that can happen. One is through the training itself. So they're being trained actually by their colleagues. So the same, teachers in our district are the trainers. It's not as if administration or someone. So teachers are asking questions of the trainers, which are their colleagues, teachers, right? So that's really nice. That is the model we set up. Equally in their schools, they meet frequently as a crisis intervention team. And they go through different scenarios, different, situations. They debrief situations, but also go through these things and have opportunities during that time to do it. So there's the building base and then the annual training that they go through where they have these opportunities. If they had other questions, they can always ask, but those are set times when that can occur. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, and I would just clarify too, some of these policies might come out that we're already practicing. They just aren't codified in board policy, right? So you'll notice like some of the language we cut was like, have a plan before 2017. We had a plan at that time, right?
Yeah, I mean, we've been doing this for almost a decade,
Yeah.
training in-house and the work and almost everything that's written in here, we've been doing pretty much for quite a while, but.
Right. So I think because I know it can be confusing too, I think for sometimes the public too, like, oh, we're just putting this policy into play and we're just starting to do these types of things. That's very much not the case. And I think probably the majority of the policies we're going to have up for review here on the board are mandates from the state legislation to have them codified into policy, but have already been in practice for many years. I think that just needs that codification in our policy manual. Oh, 100%, yeah.
To learn. I mean, it's comprehensive, but there's a lot there. And it feels like in some policies that there's traps almost, not intentional, but they could, they might make a mistake. And I think, anybody could make a mistake, and I'm sure if it's an honest mistake, then
Understood, and a point well taken. And I would also share with you that staff members who have not been trained in this are not able to engage in it. So there are very specific people in a school who are, and they can engage in, physical restraint. Others cannot. So they would know that their job, if they are not one of those people, is to immediately call the office so they can call the team down and manage the situation. So we have procedures in place for staff to be able to get the help that they need.
Very good. Is security involved in this as well, or?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, they are. It's actually in the new legislation that your security officers have to be trained in this, because oftentimes some of them come from some of our officers that we employ, either our former corrections or former police, and have been trained in a form of this, but they have to be trained in the form that schools are required to use. So they are, this is the first year that they've all been required to be engaged because of legislation in the training that schools are required to do. Yes, absolutely.
Just quick on that. How many staff members or teachers are on each crisis intervention team in the school?
I'd have to get back to you on the exact number. I can tell you just by looking at the list most recently, I'd guesstimate around 8. to 10 people are trained in every school. The list is rather long that I was looking at the other day. Yeah, the team would be about 5 or 6. So I can look at that and get back to you on that if that's okay.
And do the teachers who are not trained or staff who are not trained, what's their procedure? How do they handle a student that?
Right. Every school informs the staff of what the procedure is that they would do to be able to initiate the team, to be able to come and support them, or members of the team. It isn't always the whole entire team. Sometimes just a couple members of the team can come and manage a situation. Oftentimes, even though many of our classroom teachers are trained, oftentimes it's other resource staff that are available, such as a school psychologist, potentially social worker, the resource officer, the principal. So those are other members of the team, and oftentimes they might be the first responders because they have greater availability. We don't have to cover them in a classroom, things like that. But it does vary from school to school, from level to level. But generally, that is how situations can play out.
Thanks. Mr. Holleran?
Thank you very much. Under the section use of physical force, I actually have a bit of an issue with the strike of the term reasonable. I agree with you that removing it removes a subjective statement. However, when you have just the word restraint by itself, it implies a totalitarian view of all restraint. If you combine that with the last sentence of the first paragraph, where staff members will have the full support of the board, and the board recognizes it's become necessary to use restraint in its entirety, I think is a dangerous implication, because it doesn't define what the board considers excessive, unless we do somewhere in that document. And
Yeah, Mr. Holland, I'm just gonna, it says the definition of physical restraint is under the definitions.
Okay, I'm just reading the document. I think it defines it, but it doesn't define at what point do we consider it excessive. At what point is it restraint versus excessive restraint? That's my issue.
It does say, though, limitations for physical restraint, what's not included, which I think most would think is excessive, or
Yeah, I don't know. I think those are excluded from the definition. I think if we don't have a guardrail to say that we are not going to, here's my issue, is I think without a more clear definition of what is excluded, it looks like we're giving unilateral support for any situation where restraint was made, which I think is irresponsible.
Would adding the word trained staff in that paragraph help? Because the training is so clear about, first of all, your first priority is to de-escalate. You're not called upon to immediately put the child in a restraint. And then you are trained, as was discussed, to monitor. Typically a nurse is involved if a restraint goes on for any length of time. So I wonder if we added the word trained staff, if they're following our training, then they are doing it in a way that is appropriate.
I think,
and
I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, I was good. We also, staff are indemnified by the board. However, if they're trained and they go off script or off protocol, the board would not have to indemnify them if they did something outrageous. Again, I'm putting, trying to make a contrast between what the training provides for our staff. I used to train staff in this in my former life. So there is a lot of clear guidelines about, first you try to de-escalate, and then when that is not possible, or the child is ready to harm themselves or others, then you have to implement the protocol. But as Steve mentioned throughout his conversation, no one's doing this if they're not trained. They're not to be called to do this, and they should only do this if they are trained.
I mean,
So I don't know if that helps.
I think that's fine by me. I think it just needs to be a little bit more blatant in the policy itself. And I guess a follow-up question would be is when we struck out the term reasonable, was that before or after our legal consult provided kind of guidance? Would they have an issue with us removing the term reasonable?
No, the term reasonable is not, it's not mandated through law or legislation that it has to be in there. I know they often honestly do use subjective words like that, our legal counsel at times, but I think the committee, the discussion around this was who's to determine what's reasonable. But back to Dr. Brummett's point, if the training actually helps determine what's reasonable. I wonder if we did put trained staff in front of that where it, how it reads, the board, recognizes that there are times when it becomes necessary for trained staff to use restraint, that would possibly suffice.
Yeah, my only concern too with using reasonable, which is why I usually ask to have these cut like subjective terms where it's quote appropriate or reasonable, or my concern would be the same with excessive. If not defined again, the more we use these types of terms, the more concern I get of us opening up to legal liability of just how a parent would interpret this, or a community member, or whoever is reading this policy. We may have different definitions of what reasonable is. We may have different definitions of what excessive is. And if we codify that into policy and said excessiveness happens, there's just my concern that it becomes legal liability. So to me, when it's within the definition of physical restraint and we do these things to define it, and I believe that language came from, is that from the statute, Mr. Freese? Or no, the physical restraint definition?
Yes.
That's from the statute. So that's why that was our thought process through that. I would be obviously amenable to putting trained staff in that. But I think just using words like reasonable, excessive, appropriate, or extensive, like these are things that are immeasurable and difficult to identify, or at least others have it. There's a spectrum of identification in that.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. Exactly what you said, Jessica. I think also we can talk about trained staff, but also it should say physical restraint because that's the definition. Is there a reason why it doesn't say physical restraint in that paragraph?
There's multiple definitions of restraint here. There's life-threatening physical and physical restraint. So I think we can obviously add both, but there's multiple definitions of restraint. So I think that's
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
Miss Yap has her hand up.
Hi, excuse me. I just was gonna ask if it was possible, if Dr. Brummett or if anyone at the board thought this was reasonable, can we have like our legal team take a look at this just to ensure the words that we're taking in and out, since this is something that could, obviously if interpreted by a parent wrong, could open us up to like legal issues. Is there any way we could have our legal team take a look at this before the board votes on it? Just because I see, and I was listening to Sean, and I actually agree with some of the things he was saying. Taking those words in and out, I feel could, maybe change what someone is interpreting it. Is there any way that our legal team can take a look at this before we vote on it at all? Is that a possibility?
We have sought legal counsel on it. We are in good standing, but we could check again if necessary.
Yeah, just because we're changing words, and I'm not an attorney, and I don't know if anyone else here is an attorney, but changing words like that can drastically change the meaning of things. And just to have another look, after you've added and removed certain words, I don't think that would hurt.
Ms. Yap, just for clarification, Mr. Freese was saying they looked at it after we changed the words.
I mean, after the board right now, who hasn't decided and voted on it, I see that, different board members are asking, can things be changed or not changed? Before the full board votes on it again, just in case you add and remove anything else, can they just look at it again? I mean, we had concerns about reasonable being put in there, not putting in there, just to protect ourselves. That's all I'm asking.
Just to clarify, make sure I'm saying this right. The firm looked at this after the curriculum, or not curriculum, I don't even know what I'm at. The policy meeting met. And the only change we are doing from when the firm looked at it to now is adding the word trained in front of staff. So no other words are changing. What you see here has already been approved by the firm. The only word being added in is trained.
Yeah, the difference is between when the policy committee prior to the election met versus our new seated committee. So this cross-off, this policy is brand new, and the cross-offs are what our current policy committee has put forward and then reviewed with the
But
lawyers.
we're happy to take it back if need be. And
So that's so far trained is are there any other questions, Mr. Sharma?
I'm just going to echo the same thing. I think if the policy committee, I mean, if you all went through the whole policy and then the legal team looked at it, I mean, we should be okay, right? Because I see a potential of if something happens, like we don't have the word reasonable because that's debatable. We don't have the word excessive. I mean, what I'm going to echo is just, if the legal team, if all law firms say this fine, then we should be good. But that's number one, is to make sure we don't have words in there that are if something happens, we should have, and I think we don't have that word. We don't have reasonable. So I think, as long as the legal team's fine, we should be good. That's my opinion.
Mr. Holleran?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really saying that we need to have legal, take another look at this. But for a point of clarification, I think, Ms. Carr, did you say the only thing we're adding is the word teams? But what about omitting? Did they look at anything that we omitted? I'm specifically talking about the term reasonable.
We're adding the word trained before the word staff. Trained staff. Oh, good. Reasonable was taken out when they looked at it.
So they did look at it. Okay. I just am more thinking along the lines of, is this clear to a parent more than a legal stance who's got an issue? Because I do see a definition where restraint can be used. And I'm just thinking worst case scenario, and it says not limited to carrying or forcibly moving a person from one location to the other. Like, there's a big difference between escorting somebody out of a room and like throwing them out of a room. And if there was just a little bit more clarification where I could understand what is this policy talking about, and kind of, for me, it seems a little bit too broad at the top, where we're saying that we have the full support. I think the term trained, for me, I don't know if it needs to go to legal, but if we could just put trained staff in there, like people who know what they're doing, I feel more comfortable with that being in the top of the policy. I think is the easiest way for me to say that, is we could spike out that we have trained staff who understand how to do this correct.
Go ahead, Mary.
Sean, to your point, excluded from the definition under Section B, it's minimum contact necessary to safely escort the person. I think, are we looking back at that, or are we comfortable with the manner in which, I guess my point is, I think the definition in Section A, B, C, D, and E speak to your point. I don't know if I'm being clear about that. I think it clarifies the limits on that. Minimum contact necessary, briefly holding in order to calm or comfort. It sounds like, in my mind, that's kind of defining what you're looking for. Am I hitting?
Correct.
Okay.
No, I just think it's that one statement. I just think the implication is if we remove reasonable, I feel like we need to clarify a little bit about what restraint is. And I don't know, I think having trained staff in there works for me. I'm just asking if we can add that into that sentence.
So one comment, I mean, do we need the words, staff members will have full support? I mean, is this something, is that mandated, or is this something, do we need that? I mean, I don't know.
Or exactly are you referring?
The first one, I mean, staff members will have full support of the boards. Is that something we don't need to put in there? I mean, it's policy, so do we need to state that, like, in full support?
I mean, I will say if staff members are following board policy, the board is indemnifying them in the event that they, carry out their duties. So that could be if a child gets a scratch in the process of a very, difficult situation, the employees should be protected from any consequences from that because they were doing the best they could with the training they had. But I mean, I don't know if we're at the point where if there's a lot of questions that we table this and have another go at it and, verify what is absolutely necessary to remain in there by legal standards, because we don't, to many points that have been raised, we don't want to take something out that is part of the law that we have to have in there. And similarly, putting anything in there that could in any way cause the policy to not read in a legal fashion. So I'm comfortable with that. I'll turn it over to the chair, given the length of our conversation.
Yeah, we can definitely not make a motion and vote on this today. But are there any other concerns or questions that we do want to address or any changes? Because I'm just concerned that not having this policy on the books, like we should have had it a while ago, it seems. So, we can keep going.
We have a policy meeting before our next meeting
Okay,
as
perfect.
well.
So-
But I think I would just ask all board members, because there's going to be a lot of policies. If you have any edits, we will send per our next policy meeting. Please read the policy before the board meeting and have edits set to go. Usually, like course of action is we will present the policy as is. If you have questions, totally fine, but please read the policy before so we know which ones, or if you're saying we need to go bring these back. Because we have about 7 policies on the docket for next meeting. So just want to make that. With, like over 30, so.
So, I think are there any other, I had one just quickly, the 15 minutes versus 30. So agree 15 minutes is better than 30. So I appreciate that, that edit. But is there an end point? Like, does it end when the school day ends or the child de-escalates, or like, is there anything in the policy that we should add that, like, if this is going on for 3 hours, what's the next step? Or maybe it's covered in the training, I don't know, but just curious.
Our staff are trained on what to do in that event. And then they have to make determinations. Obviously, we try to contact family members and such, depending on the age level, but sometimes it's necessary to either call for further support, whether it be like 211 or some other types of support that might be available. So they make those determinations as they're observing and evaluating the scenario. So I can't say exactly what decision they will end up making, but they do continuously observe and evaluate and determine.
So it's not something that should be in the policy because it's a case by case basis?
Exactly.
Okay. Does anyone else have any? Oh, Anastasia, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just had a question. Is there any way that when you have a policy meeting, I know you guys have a lot of policies review, that they can send us an email so we can chime in? I know like last year we used to get emails so we would know exactly when your meetings are if we're not on the committee. I didn't get one, so that's why I was just wondering, because then I can maybe present some of those questions at the policy meeting instead of right now. And my second question is, will the board, like, is the training that the staff is receiving, is that like a video training presentation? Is it just like how is that, like how is the training given to staff? Just wondering, because I've never obviously went through it. Is it like a week-long training? Like, what does the training entail? Just wondering.
The full day is a 1-day training. It's in person. It's conducted by an instructor. We have 3 instructors in district who conduct the training. They usually work in partnership, so 2 of them usually conduct the training. So it's a 1-day in person for an initial training, and then I believe the refresher is a half day
Thank you.
in person.
Thanks.
And I'll just add, on the Newington website, under board policy, there's meeting agendas and minutes, including the next meeting date and time with the video link. So if anyone in the community or anyone here ever, is unsure, it's there. There's also going to be one in March right now we have planned. So you can see everything there.
Ms. Yap?
Is there any way you can just send it to us? I know Mr. Freese and I last year, for the new board members who don't know, the website isn't really organized. Is there any way they can just send the board members an email? I understand it's there, but if you've gone on the website, it's not like in order. So you kind of have to like search. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but I know that was something that we've wanted to work on for a few years now. It's not really easy to find. Is there any, I mean, they used to send out the emails to all of us before.
Yeah, we'll just have all the committees, we'll send it to the full board for when the committee members set a meeting, we'll send out the agenda and time link to the full board. We'll just do that going forward. Yeah,
Thank
and
you
our
so much.
our
I appreciate
website, and just on the website, our website is pretty well organized. It's a town website that definitely has a lot of complaints, but if there's something specific with the Newington School website, I think it's a pretty organized. If you go on, you can see each committee and then drill down into all of the information on each committee as well as the full board meeting. So, but we can definitely have everybody on the board informed of those. Mr. Holleran?
Thanks. Just a clarification and a point of order. The policy committee's intent tonight was to present the changes, to solicit board discussion and gather feedback, and then we're going to actually vote on it next meeting, right? There's no motion to vote on this tonight, correct?
We will be voting next meeting, yeah. So generally what happens, and Jessica explained it, is the policy will meet, they'll come to the full board with their new policy or revised policy revisions, then the board will discuss, and at the next meeting, we'll vote on it. This one was a little bit different because the policy committee met prior to the election, so half of us were here and half of us were not. So the intent was to vote on it today, but since there are questions and since we are potentially changing a word, we will take it back, make sure it's all good, and then bring it back for our next meeting.
Thank you. So just for clarifying that, so I don't think we need to make a motion to table.
No, we've not made a motion, so we can just move on.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay. Any further discussion on the policy? Sure.
I just want to, just to address Sean and everything, you got to listen to legal, because that's who's going to back us up. If we start interpreting words and things like that, reasonableness, the courts always have to look at something under the reasonable man standard. Policies and procedures are always looked at under that standard. So I don't think we should start getting involved in wording. Let legal take care of the wording, which it seems like they have already. And they're the ones that are going to stand behind us. And I understand what Sean's saying, like, well, the parents, will they understand? You know, I'm going to interpret something different than Sean's going to interpret it. It's just the way human nature is. So we can't we're getting into the weeds, I think. I think we should leave it with the legal team to determine, and it sounds like you have already, and they're the ones that are gonna have to, you know, defend it. That's all. That's all.
Next item of business is public participation on any matter related to board responsibilities. If you're in the room, you can come up to the table, or online, you can raise your hand. Any takers? Not seeing hands. All right, so we can move on to remarks by board members. And Ms. Weaver.
Yeah, I'll just say congratulations again to the John Patterson. I think we'll have to see. I think we'll have to round out our elementary school student councils, obviously. But it's just, I think, a really great way to show all the levels of what our community does. And I will just note for the public, our next policy meeting is Monday, February 5th at 7 p.m. Thank you.
I just wanted to let all of you know, I know our next general meeting is 2/7. I have another obligation work related that day. I'm going to try to make it. If not, I will be remote, but I'll review everything beforehand. I'll be at the policy meeting on Monday. And the same thing with, I believe we have a meeting 4/3, which I know is very far out, but I just wanted to get that on the record and keep you guys up to date.
Anybody else? It was mentioned already, but our next meeting is on the 7th, and that is when Dr. Brummett will be bringing her budget presentation to the board. So as circumstances, as you can, please, it is for that meeting and our subsequent budget meetings. I know if you can't make it in person, that's fine. But if you can, make every effort to come in person, because I can tell you my first year on the budget, we were remote. It's very hard to go through the book and all the presentations and everything. It's just very cumbersome. So if you're in the room, it's a lot easier to just be a part of the conversation and be able to ask questions to whoever's presenting at the moment. So make every effort possible to be in person. Obviously, circumstances arise and you can't, but would just like that. Yeah, the next, so the 7th is a presentation, and the Monday and Tuesday afterwards is when all of the heads of the departments will come and give their presentation. So it's super important to make every effort to be here. So, yeah, with that,
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
all right, we have a motion to adjourn and second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion adjourned at 8:50, or meeting adjourned at 8:53. All right. Thanks, everybody.